Hello and welcome to another edition of Ephlux Insights. My name is Babar Khan. I'm the entrepreneur in residence and co-founder for this program. We're very happy to have Jim from IT Entrepreneur Network here with us. And I've momentarily forgotten how to pronounce his last name correctly, so I'm not going to say it at all. Just a bit of a brief introduction into Jim. Jim has spent almost 3 decades, above 3 decades. Well, 3 decades makes it sound bad, so we'll just say 32 years. 32 years in entrepreneurial management, marketing, and sales with technology-based companies. He's been involved with numerous startup ventures, including telecommunications, IT, retail, manufacturing, and a number of nonprofit organizations. And he has been with i10 since April of 2008 as their executive director. Welcome to the program, Jim, and thank you for joining us.
All right. Very nice to be here, Babar. And my last name is pronounced Brasunas.
Brasunas. Let's remember that. Brasunas. Okay, so just jumping in, because people can Google up on i10. I'm sure after this a lot of people will be signing up. Could you tell us, because we want to talk about your successes as you and as your organization, could you tell us how have your most successful startups gone about creating, identifying, and evaluating new venture opportunities?
Right. Well, that's an interesting question, and I'm going to answer it because we work with primarily very early stage startups. So in most cases, these companies have actually been formed as a direct result of identifying a problem or market opportunity. So to say that we've got companies that are already established and then looking for those opportunities, it's actually the other way around. Those opportunities have been perceived by people who then become the founders of the company, and they create a company to go after those opportunities or to solve that problem. One of the interesting things that we've observed in studying, we're working with over 270 tech startups right now in the St. Louis metro area in the United States, is that a lot of the more successful entrepreneurs have in their background in some place larger corporate experience, and we see a lot of startups that are very successful, especially in the B2B space, growing right out of an opportunity perceived by people who are inside a larger corporation. So they say, hey, there's a real opportunity to do something there, let's start a company, let's go do it, quitting my day job and going to start this new thing. So that's really the way we see a lot of it happening.
Okay, great. And what are the big problems that you're seeing in terms of the startups that you have right now? You have various batches. I've gone through the website, so you have various batches, batch 2014, 13, 12. Which venture of this year and the previous years would you say were the most prominent in terms of their business model? So there's a IT-oriented business model, sharing economy business model. Maybe there's something that there's a market gap that their existing or their previous employer didn't look into. What has been the constant theme that you've seen throughout? And in this year, what is the startup that you believe will break out and bring enormous change in the area that you're in?
Okay, there's quite a few questions in there. So I'll start off by naming one or two of the companies that are my personal favorites. One that's been around for about 4 or 5 years is a graduate from we have a curriculum of programs in i10, so the ones that graduate are usually the ones that we see getting traction and getting investor interest and whatnot. The one we really like, and it's actually a very entertaining website, it's Norse Corporation, so it's norsecorp.com, hyphen to corp. And they are doing real-time cyber threat analysis and tracking. So you can look on their website, and they actually have a map of the world, and they've got it automated, so you can actually see the attacks happening in real time. So it's fascinating to see that. Also somewhat troubling. But it's pretty interesting. So they track nefarious IP addresses, create a database, and then turn around and offer subscriptions to that database for credit card processing and whatnot to reduce their risk and chance of fraud. So that's one that we like a lot. Another one, kind of in the same area, kind of a big data play, is a company called Food Essentials, and they've successfully cataloged all of the different additives to virtually every food product that you find on commercial shelves in grocery stores and whatnot. So if you have a special diet, you want to avoid certain kinds of high sodium, something like that, their database can access that, so you can basically scan any product on the shelf, and it's going to tell you what the ingredients are in that, and if it fits into your, if you're a diabetic or whatever, it fits into your diet or not. So one of their primary customers is the United States Department of Agriculture, who actually uses their database in some of the stuff that the USDA does. So those are two that come right off the top of my mind. They've both gotten outside funding. They're both very early stage, and they're both getting a lot of traction. So those are kind of a couple of them that I really like. I don't know if that answers your question, but I just wanted to put in a couple plugs for those guys.
No, that definitely answers the question. And it's very big. The second one is more in my area of interest for the food aspect of it, because people don't know, and it recently came out in one particular documentary that there's a lot of sugar that goes into something like ketchup. And people are going about their diet plan, their exercise plan, and they don't realize that, okay, they're having their protein shakes and they're having their meals and all that. They're doing the paleotopic diet, as they call it, for CrossFit enthusiasts. They're doing all that, and then they're dipping whatever they're having into this enormously sugar-addled, this paste, and they don't realize how unhealthy it is for them. But then, also in the documentary, they talk about, well, if you bite a tomato and you eat ketchup, you'll feel the difference. So that's definitely something that's really, really important, especially since the United States has a particular epidemic to a certain extent of various health problems. So definitely it's great that they can then. And just so I can understand a bit of that, and we can even explore that particular area, what kind of customer base is this particular start looking at, the second one?
Right. So initially we thought, okay, this would be a great app. You can take it into the store and be a consumer product that any of us could use to inform our shopping and whatnot. But they've actually found their most traction is with the grocery retailers who want to, they're all about product placement on the shelves and whatnot. So using Food Essentials database and knowledge, they can actually label certain parts of their shelves, and some of them are actually putting special labels that have information from Food Essentials on that, saying, hey, over here this is high fiber, over here this is and Food Essentials has used USDA standards for what can be claimed as high fiber and stuff like that, so that they're really actually almost a consumer protection agency, if you will, because if you look at packaging, all of the food manufacturers, they put these words and they couch these words on their packaging, but there are certain things that certain standards that they may say, hey, we've got a lot of fiber in here, but yet it doesn't qualify as officially high fiber. So Food Essentials can kind of cut through all the advertising hype and tell you really if this is a product that fits in your diet or not. So they're seeing a lot of the food retailers really. That's where they're getting a lot of their traction.
Yeah, definitely you need that, because in Middle East, for example, the staple breakfast item usually across middle class households is cornflakes, and people don't realize how much sugar goes into that, or how much the bad fats, I would say, goes into cornflakes, because it looks good, the packaging is really convincing, and all that's there. Also, something that came out but last year, I'm not sure which part of the United States this little controversy occurred, where someone had bothered to measure the 12-inch, the foot-long sub, and it turned out to be, came out with a statement saying the foot long is the product's name. We're not claiming it's a foot long. So that was a bit of an eye opener. Like, it's not actually the lyrics they're talking about. This is the brand name, foot long Subway. So that was interesting. I mean, I don't know if they put those documents in at that time, or it was something that was pre-existing, but that's definitely there. And it is a huge struggle of people right now who are trying to lose weight or trying to get healthy in any sort of way. They go into a store, they try a diet, maybe they don't get the right information, and they don't see the results, and that's probably a big reason why they give up on that particular lifestyle change. So kudos to that team for. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and it actually brings up a deeper issue that maybe is beyond the scope of this particular program. But advertising really, I think, has a lot to do with alienation and people losing confidence in larger institutions, because even if you're being told something that's not in itself harmful, but yet it's kind of twisting the truth, people become much less. You could say, okay, people become less naive, but and we usually think naive as a pejorative term, but we also become less trusting of each other. We become less trusting of anything, and so I don't know. I'm not saying there's an answer to that, but advertising itself, I don't know if anybody's really ever stepped back and said, hey, advertising is something that we as humans are choosing to allow in our discourse and in our culture. Is this a good choice for us to make or not? In other words, should we really have advertising in that way, or do we want to be much more straightforward and not allow people to twist the truth? So I have my own opinion, obviously, about that, but I live in a very capitalistic culture, so advertising is in a way what makes everything work. On the other hand, we don't really recognize the price that we may be paying, more psychologically for what we're getting out of that.
Yeah, in that case, I would strongly recommend, because you brought up that point, I strongly recommend you look at two people. One is a professor at New York Stern University. He may have changed roles, but he's quite easy to find. Ron Adler. So he's worked on, he's done A/B testing. I mean, that's a word we can all understand. He's done A/B testing along the lines of,
Sure.
if I try ethical direct advertising, how appealing is it? And it's all about the brand recall, as opposed to trying something it's all flash and all gimmicks, but the message isn't really that strong. It's all about recall. So when people in marketing circles usually talk about advertising, their main goal, they have various conversion goals, obviously sales at the end of the day, but some of them will say that ad was good because it had high brand recall, despite the fact that maybe it lied outright. But there's some people who have such diminished intellectual capacity, or their minds are speaking, that if you were to give a direct message, it probably wouldn't resonate with them. IBM's ads used to be really good in terms of when they would talk about a smarter planet. It used to be very technical. I remember, growing up, watching their ads and not understanding a thing. But it came a point where it's become so basic, and they're playing the consumer goods card now, where they'll show you various races of people using their product or benefiting from their product, and that's it. They don't really talk about what it's doing or what the impact is. It's a lot of flashy colors, a lot of ethnic, that group, that group, that group. I don't want to say it to come off wrong, but that's something that's
Right.
happening, right? And the justification for that, again, at the end of the day, is people are not too prone to read too much, or think too much when they're in that particular mode. And there's this concept where, for example, when I'm on Facebook, I'm a particular person. When I'm on LinkedIn, I become very professional. I takes in my religion into LinkedIn, but I might do the same thing on Facebook. Psyche logic.
Yeah.
We usually say that when someone sits down and is watching TV, and they're on a particular channel, and you give them content that is probably for someone who's watching the Discovery or the National Geographic channel, their minds will shut off, and they will think to themselves, this isn't what I'm tuning off for. I need my fluff and my guilty pleasures and things like that. That's why advertising is a long debate. So Ron Adler of New York Stern extensively, and I read his reports regularly. And there's a professor, I've referenced him so many times that my CEO, Alina Seem, he wants to throw a mug at my face. Sasha Strauss, he's a professor at UCLA. So these two people, their work in terms of their publications, it pretty much answers the questions that you're asking. It talks about clutter and things like that. So you should definitely look into that, and you can connect with them on the same level. Anyway, so moving on. Back to topic, because this always happens, or something interesting comes up, and then I go off course. Back to topic, around I-10. Could you tell us about how do you guys how does the process of starting new ventures vary geographically and culturally in your line of work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not that familiar with the entrepreneur cultures outside the United States. I'm assuming that I know a little bit about Singapore, Hong Kong, a little bit about what's going on in Saudi Arabia, but other than that, not too much. Um, but in the United States, we have Silicon Valley in our country, which is, kind of the be all and end all for entrepreneurs. It's like if you want to become an actor or an actress, you go to Hollywood. If you want to be an entrepreneur, there's this big magnet called Silicon Valley that everybody wants to go to. And one of the factors there is that there's a huge amount of VC activity in that area, and you've got a movie like the one about Facebook, it was called The Social Network, that kind of captured a certain mystique about the young entrepreneur who really doesn't have any business experience. All of a sudden comes up with this idea, starts coding a little bit, and all of a sudden he's a zillionaire. So that's kind of the stereotype that's out there. In St. Louis, we're a town that has been traditionally kind of a Rust Belt town. St. Louis used to be the fourth largest city in the United States back about 100 years ago or 150 years ago, and it's been in a slow decline. So it's not known as a place for a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship, but we're seeing quite a bit happening now, and I like to think part of that's because of the work of I-10. But we are also seeing a couple of things that are different here in this part of the country, and I think it's what I'm saying for St. Louis, I can probably say for a lot of the cities in the middle part of the United States, generally undercapitalized. We've got great deals coming out of St. Louis and great ideas and very good entrepreneurs, management teams that on a case-by-case basis can go toe-to-toe with probably any team in Silicon Valley. But the fact that our ventures here are undercapitalized, so they don't have the resources to be able to grow that management team. They don't have the resources to be able to do, very fast scaling through advertising and media saturation. So even if we have a company here in our part of the country that has a superior technology base and maybe even a little bit more traction with beta customers than a company that's in the same space out in Silicon Valley. But if the company in St. Louis is able to raise $500,000 and $1 million, and the company out in Silicon Valley has 10 or 15 million, it's a very difficult playing field for the local company. And we see quite a few companies here that get some traction, get going, get that first round of funding, $100,000, maybe $500,000, but then when they need the real significant A round, where they need $1 to $3 to $5 to $10 million. That money is very difficult to find in St. Louis alone, so it has to be syndicated, and often the lead investor is going to be somebody who says, I've got 50 great deals here, I'm going to invest in 10 of them, 40 of them I can drive 20 minutes to the board meeting, the other 10 I'm going to have to get on an airplane and maybe even transfer to be able to get there. I don't know which ones of these, but chances are I'm going to choose the ones that I can drive to. So if you want my money, Mr. St. Louis Company, I'll draw you a small circle around Sand Hill Road in Palo Alto, and if you find an office there, then we can talk. So that's been the historical thing here. So I think every city has some embedded culture. Like here we have the headquarters of Anheuser-Busch, which is a big brewing. They've recently been acquired by a Belgian company, but still they're North American. I think their Western Hemisphere headquarters are still here. We've got Monsanto here. We've got Emerson Electric here. We've got a very large Boeing facility here. Pfizer has a major headquarters here. So there's a lot of larger corporations here, and so some of the companies are spin-outs from individuals there who want to start something. So they will a lot of times, want to create something that they will then be possibly acquired by the company that they've been leaving. So that tends to make a flavor also, and I think that's probably true for almost any region You're going to get people coming out of those large corporations who have an idea. Maybe the company wasn't willing to do this, so they're going to go do it themselves, hope to get out a couple of steps ahead of their company, so then they become an acquisition target down the road. So there are a lot of factors that go into that. B2B companies, I think, do better in St. Louis because it doesn't require as much of that really B2C traction and advertising that is so costly for an early stage startup. So we're seeing probably more B2B. We also have a very significant medical and biotech industry here. We've got the Danforth Plant Science Center. We've got the Missouri Botanical Garden. Both of those are kind of world-class in what they do. So we're seeing on the tech side a lot of what we call healthcare IT companies, companies that are focused on trying to solve the data manipulation and administration challenges in the healthcare industry. So we're seeing quite a few healthcare IT companies lately.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but then you answered the question. I was going to ask in terms of challenges when the
Babar, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm having a hard time. I don't know if it's at my end or your end.
oh man. Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
All of a sudden. You moved and you spoke at the same time. That's good.
we can edit this part out later. So I was gonna ask, it's a common question in Middle East, for example. Uh, as you may know, STEM isn't really like a focus. I would put it that way. It's mostly when a person is doing their degree or whatnot. They're usually on the when I say STEM, I'm talking again, as we know, science, tech, engineering, mathematics. It's not really
Yeah.
a primal focus in terms of the talent within the country. The people who are Emiratis or people who are locals, their degrees generally do not fall into that area. They're usually managerial-oriented degrees of various levels. And then they're also the wealthy like ours. When we go seek funding, for us the word challenge is actually there's no hard. There are various people who are willing to put money in, but they're not various competent people within the same space that we work in that would understand what we're doing and we don't want at the end of the day people to come to us and say, investors to come to us and say, I put all this money in. I'm thinking I'm in the mood to create another WhatsApp, so I want you guys to create another WhatsApp for me, and I want another Facebook. Excited about the $14 billion valuation, all these things. You get someone who's willing to invest, but you can't find the right person who is not just investing. Because the issue, obviously, it's not at all about money. It's about the person's connections and what else do they bring to the table. Do they bring some value in terms of dropping the cost of customer acquisition? With Shark Tank, I'm usually screaming at people, well, they can't hear me, to go for Mark Cuban because he has a very big impact on the cost of customer acquisition. As you were mentioning earlier, that B2B companies are when B2B companies are pitching to investors, they find less problems, and the primary reason for that is cost of customer acquisition, and then the conversion and the upselling and all that in B2C is first of all hard. Secondly, the scaling takes a very long amount of time, and the recouping of your initial investments takes even a longer amount of time, and that patience is very, very rare in an investor. So I just wanted to get clarification on what you meant by challenges, and how in your vast experience, how they would tackle those challenges accordingly.
Yeah, you mean the challenges of customer acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely.
Customer acquisition? Yeah. So we've got a few successful B2C companies here in town. One of them is called Lockerdome, which is a sports site that's had quite a bit of traction. They've gotten some West Coast money and whatnot. They really have done a number of pivots. I think they've really struggled to really get customer acquisition and traction and stickiness on their site. So they've had one or two iterations of their website. For a while it looked like Facebook. It looks a little more like Pinterest now. But I think it's I wish I could say that there's a real science to it. We try to use as much of the whole idea of lean startup as possible. So we want companies to come up with a minimum viable product, get that into the hands of 50 or 100 or 500 initial users, and get their feedback and finish their design as they roll out the product. That's about the best thing, I think. I think that the money, I mean, even if getting back to advertising, so okay, so if you've got a company that has an inferior product, but you've got a huge marketing budget, you can overcome some of your product deficiencies that way. But I really believe ultimately, if you've got a superior product, as long as you can continue to get traction with it and maintain your technology lead, that people will find it. I still believe in the viralness of people. They find an app that they really love, they're going to make sure other people know about it, and that kind of person-to-person viral advertising is probably worth much more than seeing something in a banner ad or one of those hateful pop-out things that keeps getting in the way. So I think that we focus on customer care, having every user delighted by the experience of using your app or product, and if you really focus on that and continue to deliver wonderful service to every customer, that you got to have faith and keep at it, and that'll take care of itself. So,
yeah, definitely. There's this application that, again, I'm mentioning him again. There's an application that Mark Cuban famously launched a while back called Cyberdust, and it didn't really have any impact. He had shared it on his Facebook page, on his Twitter account, and various other mediums. He even mentioned it on the show a couple of times, and I didn't like. I mean, I follow the show quite religiously, so I didn't really see any impact. Even its downloads weren't that much at the time. But then what happened was this little recent fiasco with the iOS pictures being leaked. As soon as that happened, people just went on that immediately. And the main appeal of Cyberdust, if I understand correctly, is regardless of what you send to someone, within 30 seconds of them viewing it, that particular item is deleted, and the pride is that they're not collecting your data and they're not tracking it, they're not going to monetize it. How they make money at the end of the day, a big question mark, obviously, but that's their main claim, and if they stick to it, then definitely people will go for that, because the scare was pretty heavy. It's even gone to the extent where people have become very careful with their business-to-business conversations and talking about deals and talking about contracts and negotiating and things like that. So people have taken it to a whole new level in terms of how seriously they're taking cybersecurity and things like that. And that also comes into play of the first startup that you had mentioned that can track these attacks. Okay, so again, I divested because I get really interested and then I just go off course. So the third question, again, this one's from viewers. What are the new what are the new technologies from corporate or university laboratories that startups can leverage? So this is usually one of those questions where people want to know, are academia and corporations working together to do something and bridge that gap?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got kind of one world-class university here in St. Louis called Washington University. They've got some unique areas where they're doing some leading-edge research in the tech field. They're also very strong in health, bio, and whatnot. But I don't look at that area so much. Very few, I'd say relatively, like 10%, 15% of our companies are actually using IP from universities. There's a lot of reasons for that. I think tech transfer offices tend to be very conservative. I know Washington University is trying to turn that around. But in the past, their main concern has been safeguarding the university from potential imagined future legal claims and whatnot, and going after the endowment. So it's been a very, very conservative, very, very slow-moving process, actually discouraging faculty from really starting businesses and whatnot. That's been the effect. That wasn't certainly the policy. So, you compare that to what goes on at Stanford, it's night and day. So I think the universities are really starting to recognize that to create value for themselves and their alumni and to ultimately build the university, they need to make themselves an engine for entrepreneurship and spinning out companies. But that's not really the norm yet here in St. Louis. So we don't see. There's some great stuff. We have great relationships with not only Washington University, but also St. Louis University, and the University of Missouri has a campus here in St. Louis. There's other universities, major ones that we're not that far from University of Illinois, which has got a very strong tech program, and University of Missouri in Rolla, which is another strong tech program. So there is that around here, but we, like I say, 85–90% of the companies are either people spinning out of corporations to start something where they see, hey, I've got a dream or I've got a problem here that I know I can solve, or there are folks that, they're younger folks who have this dream and they've got an app and they've identified something and they would just want to go with it. So. I think the universities, they have entrepreneurship programs. I think a lot of them do that. They're all trying to be players in this space. They're trying to replicate what MIT and Stanford have done, but we're not seeing that level of really, the universities being an engine for really a lot of tech startup spin-outs yet. So that's a hope, but I think they've got a lot of internal politics that they have to deal with. I've never been an academician, or nor have I had interest in being on the faculty of a university. I have good friends who are, and I think the politics that we see on TV and in corporations pale in comparison to the politics that go on often at universities, because I think besides teaching and doing some research, those folks don't have anything else to do, so they might as well, engage in all kinds of, intrigue and whatnot, and trying to outposition each other and stuff like that. That's what it sounds like, anyhow. So I'm not a big fan of universities as functional institutions. I am a big fan of universities in their core mission of educating and producing, citizens that are strong and well educated and can resist some of that advertising that we were talking about earlier as well.
Resist or question, or not be afraid to question.
Right.
The truth, but definitely what you're bringing up is all over. A big part of Europe is facing this particular problem. London Business School, University of Oxford tried this experiment a while back, where they had their entrepreneurship society. I forgot exactly what it's called, but they had an entrepreneurship society, and one of the graduates, one of the presidents of the university, of that particular society, he went on to start a company with a professor, and that company was still within the university. It was incubated within. But then down the road, when he wanted to sell his stake, the university was unwilling, and they had this enormous legal battle, which lost them a very big chance. And that was one of those things where, if that deal had gone through at the time, they would have made something around the range of £4 million, which is about around $6 million, if I'm not mistaken, or more. And because that particular time period went away, that whole deal fell through. In that time, that company that wanted to buy them out, they just outsourced the particular creation to someone else. That's a problem, and secondly, this aspect that you brought up, where universities are trying to get into entrepreneurship, a big problem that people have, and I've been an entrepreneur, and I would say I succeeded to a certain extent. I teach with this organization, which is an American organization called Junior Achievement. I teach on their behalf in the Middle East, and I'll meet even more successful entrepreneurs, people who are like in what we would consider the billionaire range. And when they look at the curriculum that we've been given to teach, they just look at me, and then they look back at it, and they look at me and look back at it. They ask me, like, who came up with this? Because this is not what goes into entrepreneurship. You're wasting too much time on these nitty-gritty managerial processes, and not focusing on the real thing. And then there's also this other concern where, if you haven't, well, this is always the concern where people say teachers are the people who can't do, so they teach. That
Yeah.
goes to a whole other level when you talk about entrepreneurship. I mean, I could look at project management or marketing theory, and I can vomit the same stuff back at you. But if I go for entrepreneurship, where people are about a particular topic, for example, lean methodology, MVPs, around MVPs, and the professor cannot answer it, it really takes away from the message or whatever you're trying to teach. That's the first part. The second part is something that I was invited to teach at a local university, and I had a very long conversation with the dean, wherein he kept saying, "Give me a curriculum," and I kept saying the same thing over and over again, where I said that I'll give them some money, I'll give them a market gap, or we'll identify a market gap, and whichever group makes the most money should get the A plus, should get the passing grade. And it didn't go through his head. He was like, "No, we got to give the A plus to the guy who memorizes all the concepts and puts them down on paper." And I just couldn't get through to him at all. It was like a 4-hour conversation wherein
it's a very big tech, because the other way of looking at it is at a university you've got people who are studying latest technology, you've got people who are being trained in the latest finance, you've got people being trained in the business school in marketing, and all the components that you would need to make a really dynamite startup company. And you say you got all the pieces here, but you lack one thing, which is the entrepreneur spirit, or whatever you want to call it, that's going to galvanize that team into a group that's going to go out and make something happen. And that's outside of what universities value or look at as part of their mission to educate people in that way. So this is a huge gap that I think you're talking about here. So the knowledge is one thing, but actually being able to do it is another. And I think that's where technical schools probably have a leg up. For example, MIT, because basically engineering schools and stuff like that, they're already oriented towards people actually doing something, as opposed to just learning about it. So it's that difference between learning about it, studying it, or actually, rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, and actually doing it, and learning through doing, as opposed to learning through studying what somebody else has done. And so I think they're halfway there, but this is a huge gap you're talking about, and apparently it's worldwide. So the other thing is it's a huge opportunity. I mean, we've got all the pieces to create a hugely robust, innovation engine across the world. All the pieces are there, and let's just all work to make it happen, because I think we're not that far from doing it, and we're seeing it popping up everywhere. That spirit is popping up everywhere. So let's work at not squashing it. I mean, the entrepreneur spirit is not something you can legislate. It's not something you can say, hey, we're going to put $5 million or $5 billion into Riyadh or something like that, and we're going to create this whole because it's not that way. That top-down does not ultimately really work. I mean, that's great to have that support, but unless you've got unless somehow you're encouraging that from the bottom up, that spirit of like, let's solve a problem, let's do something, let's make this happen, let's make this change. That's what needs to be supported. So how do you do that? And I think that's a real challenge for universities, governments, whatnot. How do you support that spark of entrepreneurship without killing it by saying, okay, we're going to have this big program and this is the way you're going to do it? And because those people don't understand what the essence of entrepreneurship is.
Yeah. There's a person in Pakistan named Danish Ayub. He's got this company called MWM Studios, and one of his biggest problems with people, he speaks at various events, one of his biggest problems with companies is something that has only recently come to light, that Professor David Rogers of Columbia Business School teaches a strategy. Talk about less engagement, and let's talk about less about how we're talking about to our customers, and more about what the end impact is. So even this particular person, he's working in a space where Pakistan is filled with digital agencies and social agencies that will tell you that we'll get you these many likes, and we'll get you these many retweets, and these many people will look at your videos, but they don't go into the analytics of what's actually happening, who's actually coming to see that, and who you're actually engaging with. you are a female fashion brand and you've got 1 million likes, of which 90% is men. So unless those men are buying those for their wives, or they're buying for their sisters,
Right.
or they're buying for their mothers, which seriously no guy does, because he's not going to get the size right. She is going to return it, even if that's the scenario. So clearly something is off about that. And so what he tries to do is do conversion marketing, which is your e-commerce, which will take a very long amount of time. And even if the idea is very smart, the slight flaw in that thinking is there are very few people who are in control to make those decisions and knowledgeable enough to hand over that sort of work to make those decisions. And there are too many people on the managerial side who went to these universities that you're speaking, look at the bigger picture in terms of what outcomes you should be going for. And what they basically want is awareness, reach, and we have more likes, or we have more engagement, or maybe we're more talked about, or we're trending in a particular subject matter, and that's about it. So this little gap needs to be filled really quickly. And like I had mentioned about my unfortunate conversation, is very he just like one of the aspects was we're gonna make them create a business plan, and I just told them let's not do that. Let's not create the business plan, because as soon as you write the end conclusion and bind it and print it out and hand it to someone, Uber will announce something, or Airbnb will announce something, or Google will announce something, and all that will go to hell. Don't waste time writing it. Let them go to the market and meet people, like you mentioned, MVP. These are little things that people like us try to reinforce again and again with universities, but they're just so to what they believe is the way of teaching and entrepreneurship, and you go on to do nothing with it, and that really affects the name and affects the promise that you're trying to go on. So unfortunate, but in this context, Jim, what would you say is the solution? What should you and I, people like you and I, what should we be saying or countering to the universities that we are closely affiliated with, or being asked to speak at? Right. What should we be saying to them to convince them to the other path?
I think the first thing probably is to recognize that the people who gravitate towards being in universities are by and large people who want to be part of an institution like that is focused primarily on learning and primarily on research. So to expect that those people to automatically wake up and say, hey, we're going to support entrepreneurship in a real authentic way is probably asking a lot, probably asking too much. I think it's not too much to ask for universities to really create a entrepreneurship program that is really effective within the university, so that students do have that opportunity, because not all students are going to have, students are different than the faculty. The faculty are people who have made career choices to be university professors or whatnot. The students are still looking for what they want to do. So you want to make sure that they have options to engage with entrepreneurship while they're in undergraduate education, and that connection is not just with people who are professors teaching them about it, but who are actually are entrepreneurs. So creating a program within a university where they're actually bringing in real entrepreneurs and creating programs around that kind of interaction, I think that's something that's realistic and would be much more effective, because again, entrepreneurship is not something that everybody is going to gravitate to. So there's going to be only a certain percentage of your student body that's going to want to do that. But we want to make sure that those who are interested in that really have the opportunity to maximize the value of their 4 years or however long it is in the university by having that kind of interaction. And if that means the university has to bring people in from the outside, either from the local community or from farther away, that's what they need to do to make sure students have that kind of a genuine connection.
And one of the examples of this sort of university, I mean, you mentioned MIT and Stanford. Those are really good examples of universities that have a gigantic network that people can reach out to. It's even one of those aspects where you can get your foot in the door. So maybe you're not meeting an entrepreneur, you're meeting the decision maker at Unilever, the decision maker at Pfizer, who's an alumni of that university. Yeah. That foot in the door really matters a lot with MIT type organizations. But there's this university by this person named Tim Draper that you may know of, called Draper University. They have a 7-week program that they inoculate people into who have either just graduated or have companies or have startups of their own or about to go into startup mode. And all that course is, if I can even call it a course, it's not really a course. All that is they teach you a lesson. They have you meet the person who came up with that lesson, and the person is alive. It's not one of those things where Adam Smith said something. It's one of those things where someone who is alive, who had a particular hypothesis. He tested something out. He's got certain results, and they say this is the lesson he learned from it. But it could be that this lesson doesn't apply to your particular industry. So they keep that flexibility in there, where they say this particular lesson or this particular strategy only works for an IT. It doesn't work for food. It doesn't work for fashion. It doesn't work for a telecom. And that sort of experience where students are constantly told this is right, this is wrong, this is correct, this is incorrect, constantly on a daily basis, it fine tunes into that thinking. You're thinking to yourself, I don't have all the answers. For me to get a new answer to this question. So that's something that they do, and they have like Elon Musk and various other entrepreneurs come and speak to the students, meet them various ideas, and there's no like grading system. There's nothing of the sort. It's just about when you came into the school, how many customers did you have? You had 14 customers. What was your average revenue per customer? It was this. What was your average cost of acquiring that customer? It was this. You start off with point naught, and then at the end of the 7-week program, they ask you the same questions, and based on that, this student have set a 700%, 800% improvement. That's about metal, valedictorian, and things like that. And I recently found out about it, and I was being considered to be applying for that. Probably not going to do it. But I really did like the concept quite a bit because it focuses on the final objective. And once again, I have digressed. So final question, and you are a busy man, so we'll go into this. Final question. So what are the best practices in leveraging, what are the best practices in navigating the venture capital system? And what are the best practices in navigating the venture capital investment process?
Yeah, so that's a great one, and we work with companies quite a bit on that because our goal at I10, and I want to just put in a plug for our website. It's i10stl.org. So I got that in. Getting back to the advertising thing, but I think what we counsel
contextually relevant advertising is always preferred. I was saying contextually relevant advertising is always preferred.
Yeah.
As opposed to just to a mass audience.
All right, good. So what we tell our companies to do is to don't expect to get an investment, when the first time you knock on the door of an investor. You've got to build a relationship over time. The ideal thing is when you first have the concept of your company, already be thinking about and doing research about the kind of investors who are going to be interested in the deal in a space that your deal is going to happen. In other words, if you're in consumer products of a certain kind, do research on VCs and even angel groups that are active in that space, and introduce yourself to them way before the time when you're going to actually need investment. So you'll understand right away through that dialogue with them, and this is kind of an informational meeting, whether your deal is going to fit into their space at some point down the road. You'll get valuable feedback from them they'll ask questions, they'll give suggestions, they'll kind of point you in the direction that they would become more interested in you if you did this. So and then create a newsletter for investors on your company, and so every month or every quarter or whatever, you send out an email to all these investors that you haven't asked for money yet, just letting them know what's going on with your company, celebrate the successes and stuff like that. So when you do go to walk in the door to do an investor pitch or something like that, they already know who you are. They've already heard about you. They've talked about you, and maybe they've even given you feedback as to what they want you to do. So when you come in there and your presentation is, hey, we listened when you said this, here's what we're doing. So to the extent that you can build a relationship with the investors in your space before you actually need to ask them for money, you're way ahead of the game. We see so many people think, okay, I've got this great product I've just launched, I'm going to go and knock on the door. Now, a lot of, that works as well. You just got to be really stick to it. But if you've already been developing that relationship over months or over a year or something like that, your receptivity level with those investors is going to be much higher. So we try to get companies to do that, be proactively connecting with investors right from the start.
Okay, that's great. This is actually what I was bringing up when I was interrupting you. Sorry about that. But I was basically within the scope of marketing, we usually try to say that now that we've got digital and we've got tracking, we've got analytics and various other aspects of the technologies, we actually can give, you know, very contextually relevant based on the data that we've collected about them. So people like to throw this word around called big data, and I'm pretty sure we're all sick of it. But it does have some value. It is on the value of that you can be relevant in that space. So again, you're mentioning about doing your research into what your investor has done in the past, what they could probably add value to, and what their experience has been. And according to that, you can take the investment from them. And that's pretty much what people are talking about these days. The contextual relevance will be a game changer in all fundamental aspects of business, and we'll see if people actually apply it. If it's just the 1% applying it, that's what it looks like right now. But anyway, this was good, Jim. Thank you very much for taking out the time. Ephlux Insights will be very happy to have you on again. As many of the top startups that you guys are graduating on a daily basis, I'd like to be able to interview them as well. The one about the food one was more and more interesting to me. I mean, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking of more ideas around that. Because it's actually because I'll explain. So it's a pain point for me. That's why I feel more connected to it. And I know a lot of people who've experienced that pain point, wherein they're trying to have a lifestyle change in terms of nutrition, and they're not able to because of various deceit in the product packaging. We'll put it that way. So definitely, I would like to profile as many I-10 startups as possible, at least the ones that are the viable and the ones that are going to succeed. And figure out what their process was, how they went about it, their market acquisition strategy, and various other aspects of their business. And that's my further agenda.
Okay.
But that said, Jim, thank you very much for taking up the time, and we look forward to have you on again.
All right. Have a wonderful holiday. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, walaikum assalam. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.